Hi all, and thanks for being with me. I'm going to talk about a subject over which I probably know nothing, but I think I might know a little bit more than the people from Sky News, um, particularly Paul Murray. And the subject that I'm going to talk about is one that will probably bore the shit out of you, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I find it kind of fascinating, and that is tariffs. Now, Chris Bowen, our energy minister, came out the other day and he talked about a carbon tax. Now, a carbon tariff. Now, as it appears, a carbon tariff is something that you impose upon another country whereby they're producing extreme carbon emissions as a result of the types of products that they're producing. And so cement and steel would be two of those products, I guess. That's what they say anyway. So for a product from China or from Asia that was being manufactured in large quantities and we were importing, we would add a tariff, a proportional tariff, which would offset their carbon emissions. So that's the plan, right? So I'll just take you to this news item. So there's two ways of looking at this. This is really what this plan is all about, and whether or not it is the same as what Donald Trump has done, because it ain't. I mean, the reality is Donald Trump's a moron. Donald Trump has had this tariff thing sitting in his head since the 80s. It's got nothing to do with climate change. It's got nothing to do with making the world a better place or even the United States a better place. It's simply about him exerting some power and authority over other countries so that his sense of authority increases and his movement towards a fascist country becomes more and more pronounced. So that's why Donald Trump's doing all this, I think. But the other thing too is that it can get distorted, which is what some parts of the media tend to want to do. They want to take the issue of tariffs and turn that into something that it simply isn't. And so when I saw this post from Paul Murray, I was bemused by the way he presented it, and I'll show you that to you in a little bit. But also I was interested in the notion that he wanted to let everybody know that tariffs, no matter where they come from, are simply bad because Donald Trump has done the tariff thing. And because Donald Trump has done it and people have got Trump derangement syndrome, clearly they're misguided and it's just not the way that it is. This is Murray's argument. But when we look at tariffs differently in terms of the carbon tariff, we have a different perspective on what this means. Now, here in Australia, we've issued tariffs for years. There was a time when we issued tariffs on the textile industry back in the 70s because of the influx of goods from Vietnam and from Cambodia and so on. And our textile industries were suffering badly. Eventually we had to abandon that idea because we just couldn't compete with them even though there was a tariff. So tariffs are not new, and we impose tariffs now on other countries. The United States are 99% free up until this point because we have a surplus with them. So, and because we have the free trade agreement. But that doesn't matter to Trump because Trump's a moron. Need I say any more? But the issue here is that the carbon tariff is an interesting one because of what it tends to want to do. So I'll take us to this news item here. So Bowen open to carbon tariff, says Australia must do more to hit 2030. So this is an effort to be able to hit these particular targets that we've committed to. Energy Minister Chris Bowen says Australia is by and large on track to hit its 2030 emissions goal, but concedes they need to do more. They need to open to a carbon tariff on cement and other products pending an expert review. And it's important to note here that this is pending the review. So the government hasn't decided to do this yet, haven't come out and made the bold claim that Trump has made that, we're going to tariff everybody, 10%, and, 140, 145% for China, and 90%, 100%, whatever it is for Canada, and so on. None of that's happened here. This is a specifically targeted tariff so that other countries, so we can charge them for their carbon emissions. That's basically what it amounts to. So that we can encourage really large contributors to the climate change problem. We can target them so that they will do something about their emissions. That's the goal. Quite simple, quite straightforward. But that isn't the way necessarily that others see it. The government will soon decide its 2035 target, subject to the advice of the Independent Climate Change Authority and its bidding to host the next Global Climate Conference. A carbon tariff on dirty cement or steel made elsewhere could be considered in the Albanese government's second term, as Energy Minister Chris Bowen conceded Australia must do more to achieve its climate targets. So what does all of this mean? Carbon tariffs are a tax on carbon-intensive imports, which recently triggered heated international debates. Certain industrialised countries have been advocating the adoption of carbon tariffs on products imported from developing countries, such as China. According to Marco Springman, a physicist turned economist, the main reason is that certain rich nations have implemented binding targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, while poorer countries have so far registered little commitment to do just that. So that's the issue. But where does Paul Murray sit in all of this? Well, Paul sees tariffs in terms of the way Trump sees tariffs. So Trump's tariffs are an imposition on everybody because he wishes, and his goal is to reindustrialise the United States. And that's fair enough. Won't happen, but that's the way it goes. But that's the goal. The goal is that the United States has exported a lot of their products because they've exported them because they're having them made in China and elsewhere in the world, and are not making them at home. So he's going to put tariffs on those countries so that they will start making stuff in their own country, including steel and aluminium. So what does all of this mean? Well, what it means to our friend, our buddy, our mate, Paul Murray, is that tariffs are simply bad, according to everybody else, because they're a Trump tariff. And that's just not true. So here's what he has to say about all of this. And you make up your own mind as to whether he's on the right track and really understands tariffs at all.
I love when two things can be true at the same time. Now, as you know, there is one word that starts with T that is a bit of a swear these days because the T word is used by an orange man. An orange man.
I know when it comes to Paul Murray, the T word means tool.
Bad.
Tariffs.
Tariffs.
Tariffs. Tariffs.
Tariffs.
Tariffs. Tariffs. Tariffs. Tariffs. Tariffs.
Tariff.
Tariff.
And just this weekend, that bad orange man decided that he was going to increase the tariffs on all steel imported into the United States from every other part of the globe to 25%. Remember, orange man bad.
Can we just remember that the reason why carbon tariffs are important to some extent is not because it's a blanket 25% or whatever, but because it's about ensuring that the emissions that these countries have contributed, the carbon emissions, are counted, in fact paid for by them when those particular products are imported.
Extraordinary escalation from the US president, doubling tariffs on steel and aluminium imports.
US President Donald Trump vowed to double the tariff on steel imports.
The Australian steel...
He's not doing it because of any desire to improve carbon emissions or to cut them down. Not doing it because he's concerned about climate change. He's doing it because he's a clown.
The industry is reeling tonight after Donald Trump extended his trade war by doubling steel tariffs to 50%.
Now, American workers in the steel industry love this. Why? Because cheap crap from overseas ends up costing more because this extra tax, when it crosses your borders, increases the price. Remember, orange man bad.
There's a lot of jobs here. There's, more coming now, and there's going to be a lot of more demand, with the tariffs and everything that he's doing. And I think the tariffs are a very good decision. Go Trump.
Yep, let's listen to some MAGA person tell us how great Trump is, and we all should be.
Thank you so much.
So, as we know, the word tariff is really tax, a little bit like levy. And if you put a charge on top of everything that crosses your borders, apparently the rest of the world does not like it. This is an old school way of playing trade in a global economy where slave labour makes things in one part of Southeast Asia, and then the Western world, of course, demands it must be used by, among other things, government when it comes to, say, energy. But of course, when it comes to this specific situation, when it comes to tariffs and Trump and Orange Man bad, is that essentially putting a tax on something is unfair because it means that the idea of international and free trade is fundamentally at risk.
If it's, and this is where Paul falls over, I reckon, if it's a tax put on everything for no other reason apart from the fact that the man that this orange clown that he talks about simply wants to demonstrate his authority, and he's had this thing around the tax, about tariffs for decades now. And he believes falsely that it's going to bring businesses back to the United States and that it's punishing his adversaries. Then it's a foolish argument because it doesn't. But if you're doing it with kind of an altruistic view, and that is that you're doing it because you believe that it's going to help you get to the targets that you've now set in terms of climate change and emissions, then it's a good thing. Now, I'm not going to suggest right here that I understand what it all means because it's involved. But I do believe that it has the possibility of at least achieving something that this country believes is important, which is decreasing the emissions worldwide. And if we can contribute to that, given that we're such a small country, by putting a tariff on goods that come to this country where the emissions are large, then I think it's kind of like a good thing. But anyway, I'd be interested to know. I know this is one of those great topics that many people would want to subscribe to and would want to comment on maybe, but maybe you've got some ideas about whether whether a carbon tariff is a good or a bad thing. And whether or not you notice the difference between whatever it is Trump's doing in relation to tariffs and what Bowen's doing. And remember that the Bowen objective is to seek information, is to have an inquiry, is to have an expert bring back or delve into this issue and then develop some ideas as to whether it is appropriate or not. And if you were to do a tariff, where would you do those tariffs? What would be the industries that you would punish? So let me know what you think in the comments section below. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.